Greetings, gods and goddesses in training. Welcome back to the channel. It is Uncle Makara, all relations. Let's get started today. It is Nectar November, okay? And I'm here to break down my own personal journey of how I went from being a ghost to a Jedi, okay, in a certain sense. Because I'd started to understand that hiding felt very safe for me. So I would earlier use meditation as a way to avoid my fucking pain instead of actually communing with the divine, communing with God. I had gotten on this spiritual journey because I just wanted to be a rebel. I never fit in anywhere. I would always just look around and try to fit in. And I think we know this understanding, right? To be validated, to be liked by others, to have a good group of friends, to be the popular kids or whatever that is. So I never shied away from showing myself and being this grand personality on stage, because the theater really helped me transform. I remember when, just tapping into these theater improv exercises would set me free in different ways. It made me undulate my voice. It made me kill my ego at the time. It made me understand that I can be somebody different, that I don't need to be stuck to my past conditioning and being this very specific way all the time. Now, of course, I'd gotten this fear of vulnerability, this fear of rejection, constantly belittling myself, criticizing myself, and being in my own head rather than experiencing my reality, inhabiting my body actually, and living much more grounded. So I started off my spiritual journey being like a crown chakra seeker, wanting all of the tech and the tricks, right, to hack my state of consciousness, to hack the state of flow, instead of embodying and making flow state my lifestyle, my beingness, the way that I show up, the way that I allow things to happen, right? So it became more of a micromanagement than a flow in the beginning, because I was trying to control everything. Right? I was trying to control all these outcomes and understand this breath work created this outcome for me, therefore I have to practice it this many times, right? And it just became more and more suffocating for me, right? To live in this persona and this archetype, this very knowledgeable guy who has a master's and all these certifications, but inside he doesn't feel good enough, right? He doesn't feel like he's fully just embodied and feeling like himself. So I became the master of escape, and I say this because this is what led me to the occult. Now, the occult could have swallowed me up into the abyss, because I know that by studying channeling mediumship, I could have easily been possessed. I could have easily gone off the deep end. But there was something within my own inner nervous system and infrastructure that kept protecting me, that kept me coming back to my father's spiritual retreats, that kept me going in terms of understanding that, wait a minute, there's gotta be another way, right? There's gotta be a different way in terms of looking at this thing, and it cannot be this one specific way. You see, I'd hired so many mentors, right? And of course, I'd gotten a lot of results, right? But it didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel aligned in myself. I mean, certain mentors who can point out the truths that I didn't know within myself, that was empowering. But I also got persecuted by mentors. I also got roasted by them. I also got put under the bus. And that's the thing, when you are in your power, when you're shining, you're gonna get put under the bus. You're gonna have people, trying to take you down because they're jealous of you and so forth, right? So all this rage, jealousy, lust, confusion in my youth, I had to transmute into this flow state essence. This month, we turn our shadows into nectar, so I really wanted to bring this up because I think this is gonna help a lot of people. So when I learned I could breathe through my discomfort, I could create through movement, I can actually speak vulnerably and not be so closed. Of course, thank you so much to my girlfriend, because she's helped me really open my heart and be able to actually express that essence out instead of always keeping it inside and letting it broil inside and bubble up in different ways, So I integrated my kind of schizoid being in my head tendencies. And I stopped hiding in my head. That was number one. I stopped analyzing life like a detached monk, and I started actually feeling life, embracing life, which actually was incredibly triggering to my core wound of not belonging. So I decided to go completely opposite and be an outlaw. You see, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, as many Indian kids face this conundrum. But I always knew I was here to be a neo-shaman. Somebody who's going to be a trailblazer, somebody who's going to move ahead or spearhead some level of a movement. I didn't know Primal Sutra at the time. Primal Sutra was an accident. It was created from pure synchronicity. And of course, myself and Ryan G, we used to be in the pickup arts community, being very drawn to that. But then we had to move away from that because we started to realize, this isn't serving us anymore. There's so much falseness and fakeness, and it works in terms of just getting you some training wheels, but really it's about that authentic expression of that natural self-realization that you're gonna have to chime into, right? But I realized this is an ancient self-defense that was happening in my own system. I learned to dissociate from a world that felt too loud, too intrusive, too unsafe for my sensitivity. So I learned early on that thinking is safer than feeling. And once I realized that, I would just keep being in my mind, right? Any problem, I'd chew on it in my mind. But that's not the way to go about things. And then suddenly something cracked for me. I got tired of being just this floating intellect. My first epiphany, I think, was in our first event in Bali, when I had adopted this moniker of the Makara, right? That's like the little robot that weighs people, okay? So ignore that for a little bit. So it's funny because I could talk about enlightenment all day, but not even make eye contact with people at the time. I realized my isolation was needed. To be the loner archetype, the hermit, right? Was so needed for me. For me to meet myself. For me to understand that I am actually on this grand scale of things. It's not only about me, right? But it's about something greater than me. Something that's moving me, right? Something that's been there since the beginning of time. But this is when the alchemy started to happen, and I started to do authentic level shadow work, and I started to actually understand, what was I running from? What was I avoiding? Why was I in this kind of spiritual escapism? And then I realized the flow Jedi isn't about zoning out, it's about zoning in. It's about tuning in, dialing in. And then when your awareness becomes emotion, your mind and body will fuse into one instrument. So you don't observe your emotions anymore, you start riding your emotions like waves. I don't isolate to find peace anymore. I express myself to stay free. I went to I think, therefore I am, to I feel, therefore I am alive. I've always kind of felt like I was from another planet growing up. I never really adjusted to human life. It felt almost like I was socially inept or something, or like autistic. I don't even know what I was, but I know from a young age I was just labeled as having dyslexia and ADHD and all of these different things. I had these understandings that I would go into being labeled by teachers, being trapped based on this one label. And it was difficult for me during the time because I remember being in relationships and having these panic attacks, because it would just threaten my self-esteem every time. And I kept attracting very masculine energy women, because I hadn't done that polarity work internally. I hadn't grounded myself and met my divine masculine. So of course, the energy that I was receiving, very wounded feminine, right? Because I had not accepted my internal feminine. And I was closer to my feminine growing up because I was closer to my mother growing up. However, at the same time, I realized I had to find some masculine energy that was out there. My dad was masculine, but he's very quiet and stoic in his own nature. He didn't express himself as much. So I felt okay, maybe I needed to just recalibrate and, find some internet surrogate dad, right? And, I tried for a while. I tried that for a while. Then understanding the only relationship that's worth having is with my heavenly mother and father. The earthly ones are great, and I'm very connected to them. I love them for infinity. But at the same time, there's this deep, profound love that's unexplainable and unconditional. I think this transformed everything for me, because I started to not go with the flow, but I started to be the flow. I started to recognize that this was so important for me to just tap into my interests, my strengths, and not have to worry about who's watching, what I'm doing. I constantly was interested in this refinement and improving myself, and, on this endless adventure of transformation. But the thing about that is also like you're never meeting yourself, actually. You're always trying to still run and get these level ups instead of actually embracing and enjoying and cherishing your life. You see, for long-term happiness to actually go down and happen, you're gonna have to start to recreate your relationship with the present moment. And I'm the biggest escapist on planet Earth. I used to be, okay? So now I've understood there's gotta be a moment of peace and presence where I just relocate my breath, I take my sensations, I hold it at the top of my head, and I let it go, okay? I let it go. You are going to stay in stagnation until you push the momentum in the beginning. So don't resist anything, okay? Allow yourself to weave and be adaptable through all of this. This is what was a survival strategy that then I understood became my gift. Because it's only through my creativity, my humor, my wisdom that I've gained over these years that I've been able to pinpoint what's actually working for me and what are my blind spots, what are the things that keep pulling me away from my power and authenticity. So I remember I hired a mentor for Law of Attraction 2017. I think I got caught up in the spiritual communities. I had even done like events for the pickup artists, right? And yes, I had some successes here and there, but I was like also deeply unintegrated, deeply confused about who I was. Yes, I was the flow state guy, but it didn't feel real, it didn't feel embodied. Now it feels embodied. Now I can actually be in this energy and not worry so much about what others are thinking about it. I could have gone a very dark path. Imagine me on the dark side, bro. That's gonna be a scorpion, okay? That's gonna be tough to beat. But I understand I chose the gray path. I chose the path of the light, of truth, of Christ consciousness, of Buddha mind, the middle way. And I knew that was right for me. I knew being an omnist was right for me. I knew I didn't have to drop all my own old methods and just start guru worshiping. I think I spent so much money into mentorships until I understood if the energetics of this person does not respect me and won't give me the value that I know I have, why would I stay in this circle, right? Just to trauma bond? Belittling people from other parts of the world that don't have direct access to that one mentor. That's what it felt like. And myself and Ryan G, we got pissed. After a while, we're like, enough is enough, bro. We gotta do our own thing because now is the time that the world needs this movement. We just knew it was right and we went ahead with it. And now, if you're not as doubled down on this journey, if you're kind of like, oh yeah, he's making YouTube videos. Oh, that's kind of cute. That's nice, That's super cool, bro. Oh, you got a channel? That's nice. Instead of what? Yo, this is my magnum opus. This isn't even by design. Right, this is a symbiote of spirit guides, right, that has taken over this whole equilibrium. And now we're moving with the force of this energy to understand our connection with these light beings instead of being confused and frazzled and scattered and like most spiritual people. And this is why I had struggled with organization. Nowadays I'm starting to get a little bit better at it, but still it's like it's really infused into that creative archetype of being this messy kind of creative person, right? So now I'm slowly leaning into this refinement, and I'm starting to recognize my journey was so amazing. Going to all these different parts of the world, gaining all this new insight, understandings, technology, right? Living in Europe, living in Thailand, like having all of these amazing experiences in life, you know, being in 4 years in the US and a year in London, all of my experiences, you know, including some dark nights of the soul, man, which completely shattered me, you know. I remember I was very suicidal once in college as well. And it was a tough time for me, you know, but during that time is also the time that I started to experiment on myself and start doubling down and listening to binaural entrainment and binaural beats during my 20s, right, in my college years. And I started to get into subliminals and really understanding the subconscious mind during that time, I remember. And then what happened? I started getting results. I was in such an eclectic place in the middle of nowhere that I had to fit in because this was like the Burning Man of all liberal arts schools, right? So of course I had to create my own movement. Of course I had to do this thing. And I had to drop my Scripps archetype in order to pick up this moniker. Scripps used to be my rap name, and it still is. However, at the same time, I had to drop that essence and pull into this framework of Uncle Makara. And the Makara is the Hindu sea monster, so he's the grounded masculine, right? The one that understands I can stay at the bottom of the ocean and be okay with all of the world's chaos and nonsense. I can handle all of it because all of it is on the surface and I'm in the depth. You see what I'm saying? If you feel this, give me a like, give me a thumbs up. Share this with a friend so they can also wake up out of their spiritual trance and journey. And they can start to actually double down on being the flow state shaman and Jedi of their own life. Instead of constantly relying on others, depending on others, you know, it became too much. After a while, I just realized it's more important for me to move ahead and start creating ripple effects, right? Massive changes, impact-driven growth, just crushing it. And this is what I want for you to reach the similar epiphany that I did. You see, trauma dumping comes from a reaction. It's from the victim mentality. You speak it to feel it for the first time. It's blame-based. The world made me do this or say this. It has a flood and a chaos and an emotional spillage. And you'll notice it sounds very panicky. It feels sticky, draining, unresolved. But from pure awareness, you feel it first, and then you speak it. It feels cathartic, yet it feels complete to express yourself honestly. So that means expression creates space. Feel it, distill it, then share it. Am I sharing to connect with others, or am I sharing to offload, to vent? If you share to connect, you'll notice you start speaking a lot slower. Now, sometimes I chime into that fire energy. I have a lot of, you know, I'm a rising in Aries in the Western astrology, so you already know, got that fire energy within me with that Scorpio sun, right? That water and fire creating smoke. But other times I like to be in my earth element and stay grounded. Because I've realized I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to remain invisible anymore. So this was kind of like this understanding of this visibility wound, right? Struggling to be seen, struggling to be heard, struggling to be acknowledged, or maybe even over-acknowledged, or just kind of seen as like this performer rather than a real, authentic, genuine person that someone can give daps to and relate to, right? So most spiritual people might feel this too. They might be feeling this frightening feeling. You became a light worker because somewhere deep down you felt unseen, you felt small, ignored, rejected. And you made a throne out of wisdom to make sure no one ever does that to you ever again. You started reading Rumi quotes instead of admitting your own loneliness. You started collecting crystals, not de-armoring yourself. You started channeling the Arcturians because you couldn't face your own human mess. And the world clapped for you. Everyone said, oh wow, you're so deep. But what they're really saying is thank you for performing enlightenment for me. And you became addicted to that validation, to being the calm one, to being the caretaker, to being the healer, the one who knows. But underneath all of that is just a scared, shaking child. And no one sees how scared that child is. I had to face that too, the inner child healing, okay? I'm pretty sure some negative things happened to me when I was very young, but I had blocked it all out of my memory, you know? So spirituality became my anesthetic. It became my sedative. So I wasn't transcending, I was dissociating. And then it hit me, real spirituality is not floating above the human experience. It's about diving so deep into it that you stop running from anything. It's about letting the ego die, not grooming it into a spiritual ego or a spiritual persona. So I stopped being the quote-unquote awakened one. Start being the real one. And I started being the real one. Is the real enlightenment, I believe. Admitting that you were afraid, admitting that you were jealous, admitting that, you know, sometimes I don't want to heal anyone. Or I just want to curl into a ball and watch Netflix. The world doesn't need another fake guru. They need someone who's willing to go through their own BS and still choose flow and love afterwards. So here's my challenge to you. Drop that mystic mask and let people see you're human behind your halo. That's the moment. Your message stops being content and it starts being consciousness. Full presence and power to you. Let's get it today, Upward Spiral gang. May we never be the same again. Thank you for tapping in and chiming in. You already got this. May the flow be with you. You got this. Winning. Upward Spiral.